That's good.
Welcome everyone to Season 3, Episode 85 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host, Yash, joined by my co-host, Tyler Chan. In this episode, I would like to start it off with the fact that I actually have a job now. I recently started my job as NBC Sports Social Media Coordinator on Monday. Super blessed and super thankful to have a job right now, especially in these times. But that, I'm excited for the opportunity, but this whole week has kind of been a little crazy because I've been trying to get on board all online, obviously no in-person office. So it's interesting getting onboarded with equipment and also meeting the team and everything officially just all online. Very different type of vibe, but it's still fun and everything. But definitely it's been a little weird getting adjusted to real working hours and such. So that's probably that's a good explanation on why you've probably seen our social media feeds and just the word from both of us has been kind of quiet because obviously we're both working now. So we don't have the luxury to always watch every game because either we're working or something comes up, but we're definitely going to try our best to continue pushing out content for you guys. But yeah, that's kind of a little personal update for me.
I have to say, Yash, I am, on behalf of everyone, we have to say super proud of you making it big at NBC Sports. Because to kind of give context, NBC Sports is the TV broadcast network that broadcasts the Premier League in the US.
Yeah.
So if there's any network to really get into, and for Yash, it'd be NBC Sports for the Premier League, for the Premier Pod. So this is huge. And being on the social media team, I know you said that for the Premier Pods, like Twitter and other social media like Instagram, it's been a little quiet since you started. But I mean, now you're working on the social media accounts for NBC Sports. So literally you're on their Twitter. Some of your posts are now on their Twitter account.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So technically you are still posting. It's just now for NBC Sports and just going to a lot more people.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Now it's just a little bit different and going towards maybe a little bit bigger audience, but obviously you got to show love still to the Premier Pod audience. Been there since day one.
But that's sick though.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope so, but there's still a lot to learn and a lot to do, but I'm super excited to hopefully, when the Premier League season kicks back on, helping out with as much of the coverage as possible. But yeah, in general, I'm just super excited. I think anyone that kind of starts a new job has that same energy, and I definitely want to keep up the energy throughout my time there. But yeah, so now Tyler and I are both working, so it's very interesting because if you followed this podcast from day one, we were both started the podcast as college students, and then this past season, during season 2, obviously I was still in school and Tyler had just started his job. So we were basically working the schedule of Tyler would be the one working and I just was still the college student. And then the summer came and we were both, not both, but I was looking for jobs. So I kind of had all this time available. Tyler was still working and now I have a job. So it's in 3 seasons of just different circumstances for both of us. But I think, one thing we always wanted to maintain to do is the podcast. So I don't think that will change anytime soon, but we might have to alter the schedule and alter the time we record here and there just because my schedule can kind of get a little wacky working in sports. So we'll just have to work around that, but we'll definitely try our best to keep the podcast going and keep the weekly episodes for you guys and such. But they might just come out on different days, but we'll definitely let you know if that needs to happen in the future. But yeah, it's interesting and it's fun, but it's just 2020, the time we live in. All
That's
interesting
crazy.
Times.
Literally, it was like a tale of 3 seasons. It's just now you're in the real world, Yash, and you are the inside correspondent for NBC Sports.
I know. It's wild to be working for literally really working for NBC Sports, such a big brand, but it's definitely interesting. Like you said, literally a tale of 3 seasons, just how we basically went from college students to working to one being a working, normal working class person, then me still being a college student. And then now we're both just working. We're just like workers.
Now we're just Dirk Count working class heroes.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But it's crazy because I know while I was still in school, at least. Well, I'll say this: like, I think like a lot of people are like, oh, you always got to have like a side hustle or a side project. But now I can definitely see, even on my first week of working, I can see how hard it is to kind of get side projects or get any of these other type of hustles on get started, especially when you're working like a full-time job. Because man, after working like a full 7.5 hours, 8 hours, depending on what break, how you just structure your breaks or whatever, you definitely get pretty exhausted after logging off.
Mhm.
I don't know if you feel the same way, Tyler.
No, no, I definitely do. That's literally. It's kind of weird that you're physically worn out after sitting at a computer for like 8, 9, 10 hours in a row, and then
Yeah.
after that, just hopping straight into the pod. But it kind of it's kind of like that in season 2 and 3 for me, and you kind of it's something you don't really get used to, but it's just something you kind of learn to deal with, and then you just kind of
Hmm.
get that second wind energy once you start, because that's how it is. It's like, yeah, really, these side projects, these ideas that you kind of do for your self passions, like the podcast for both of us now, it's
Hmm.
just something you kind of have to put a lot of extra energy into, and then hopefully it goes through. But I still think that overall, the whole premise of the Premier Pod, which is just an hour of our week, just to make sure we don't really think about anything else from work or anything. It's just an hour for us to just talk about anything we want around the Premier League, or just kind of the soccer in general, and kind of push away everything else and just kind of give ourselves a way to meditate that way. And this
Yeah.
is it. And hopefully it is for everyone listening too.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoy. I mean, you guys. Some people must be enjoying like our content and such, because we see you guys downloading the episode and such. So we appreciate the support on your guys' end. But yeah, I think to finally like dig into this episode a little bit, we wanted to mention quickly the coronavirus and COVID-19, especially in the United States. It's been hitting harder for us than it has been for some of the European countries. I think they've done a good job of curtailing it and practicing good social measures, and practicing wearing masks and such. Unfortunately, in the US hasn't been the same story. It's kind of been all over the place. But when it comes to the actual sporting scene, it's a little interesting because the we what we've seen is the MLS and the NBA, when they've had bubbles or when they've had requiring their players to wear masks, socially distance, be inside a bubble, that the cases have literally been 0 to none. I mean, maybe 1 to 0. I mean, like, I think the NBA and MLS, since their latest testing things have gone by, like coaches, staff, and players pretty much at 0. And what we've seen with like the NFL and the college football, which is two of the other bigger sports in America, the protocol and such, there really hasn't been one. I think they had all this time, but they really haven't adjusted. But the biggest issue there is how this coronavirus and stuff will kind of affect worldwide going into this new season, because I think we've all heard about, oh, there's a second wave. There can be a second wave. The second wave could even be more deadly than the first wave. And right now, it's still the summertime and everything, but the second wave they're talking about will usually happen around during the flu season, when normally a lot of people get the flu, which is, I would say, what, like November,
Yeah,
December,
like
January, right?
American Thanksgiving
Yeah.
week. That's usually when I get sick.
Yeah, literally same. That's literally usually around the time I get sick. And I would assume the same thing it's the same in European countries and such. So I think um it's tough. I think we all want to see fans in the stadium, but especially in like even in the European scene, I think we're probably going to have to sit through for most of this new season as well with no fans, and just kind of dealing with the fact that that the I guess the virus is still real and it can still affect players, and still, they can still get infected and such. So I think I think the Premier League still needs to keep up all its measures of testing frequently and everything, and all the other leagues as well. Because I think if they let up, I think that's when things could get really bad, and they would have to delay the season even more. But I think if they continue the safety measures they had for Project Restart, I think they should be in a decent place to just finish out the season and literally go from just play the season in the normal months instead of having it delayed and dragged out for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that when Yash was mentioning how NBA has the bubble here in the US and also MLS has the bubble in the US, it's to kind of give context to what that also means is that all the teams that are in the competition or potentially winning the NBA championship or MLS Cup, all those teams are flown into one city, and that city was Orlando, and then they all played in like a neutral area within this bubble in Orlando. So that's the one big difference is like they kind of control everyone and make sure no one entering the bubble is sick and no one exiting the bubble can get back in without being tested and like kind of being quarantined.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Premier League, at least so far, we've been seeing, and across Europe, besides like maybe the Europa League and Champions League, everyone is being flown or like driven to away stadiums, home stadiums, and they're still playing on their home grounds and away grounds. But at least in the US, everyone's kind of playing on like a neutral site, and no one's really traveling. But that's as kind of as Yash mentioned, as like a fact that US is kind of struggling in terms of handling these COVID cases, and they're just skyrocketing. So even traveling is kind of dangerous around here. So I think the Premier League will be very similar this upcoming season to how we saw Project Restart. I don't think there'll be too many fans. I think it'll just be, those virtual fans that we see behind the TV or behind the goals, just on the big screen TVs.
Mm-hmm.
Just the occasional like 16 grid of just random fans kind of cheering.
Manchester City already had their full stadium at that point.
No, literally the full stadium of just 16 people. The true 16 fans. But literally, I think that's what we're going to be seeing next season too, which, not gonna lie, is going to be a bit of a shame because now certain teams like Liverpool, for example, really ride on the atmosphere and the cop itself, like just the fans cheering them on. I really feel like it's that 12th man that really helps them get through. And certain other teams, maybe like Man City, who don't really have big of a fan base, could probably benefit from these kind of situations where it's like, oh, we don't really have any fans, we just have to play our game. It's like, all right, that could probably help us. So that would be very interesting to see how some of the smaller teams will also do too, because I feel like certain teams like Bournemouth, they were a very close niche stadium, whereas like not that many people were able to enter, but it was so small that I feel like your fans were just always there, like just like a foot away from the action all the time, and that can help cheer them on. And without those fans, that might be why they got relegated too. So we're gonna have to see how this really affects certain teams and how they really get through.
Yeah, I think even I would say it might even help teams like West Ham or Newcastle, that sometimes if you watch their home games, you can kind of see the fans turn on the players really fast when things don't go their way. So when there's no fans, we saw that Newcastle performed pretty decently. West Ham obviously were able to get out of a relegation fight, stay up in the Premier League. And maybe that was down to not having the fan pressure of, oh my gosh, like they're booing me every time I touch the ball. They could just kind of do the Man City way, like, oh, control what we can control and then see what happens. So I think it's a pro and con for both. But I'm very interested. I think we brought up the question how this will affect youth academies in Europe. Obviously it's going to affect people in America, but in the especially in Europe, I wonder how a lot of these youth facilities and such, like these, these wonderful academies from like Manchester United, Liverpool, Barcelona, and such will get affected because of COVID. I don't know if they can afford to have daily testing for basically kids, like so many kids that they, try out and have at their academies and such. So I don't know if this will put a delay on youth development and stunt their growth. But if that happens, that's a huge loss for clubs that really rely on their youth. I'm talking like Southampton, Manchester United promotes a lot of youth. Liverpool try to promote youth. Barcelona, they've kind of gone away from that in a little bit, but they try to promote their youth. So if we're seeing more clubs having to postpone or maybe not train as many kids as they hope to in the normal season, maybe that postpones how many kids they can kind of promote to the senior level as well. So that could definitely stunt the overall quality of the squad too, if the youth academy is failing them.
Mm-hmm. I honestly don't know how these clubs are going to maintain that kind of high growth and just grit from the academy. Because like if you think about it in comparison to schools in America, where a lot of sports, at least I feel like, are kind of grown through, or like athletes are just grown through like, you know, private school system and public school system, and just schools facing off against each other and like their team sports. It'd be like high school versus high school, things like that. And then those players develop into, you know, college athletes that, you know, go to D1, D2, D3 schools,
and
then
eventually
and against each other too, and like colleges versus colleges, universities versus universities, and then eventually they go into, you know, the professional athletes realm and like professional sports. But with all this online shift, I'm wondering how athletes are going to be affected, or like the next generation, because now you can't do an online
you just have like Jurgen Klopp showing the kids how to juggle a ball.
It's
Zoom,
like, imagine that
Zoom call.
It's like Wii Sports, but literally on. It's like that's not going to work. There's no way. So I honestly am kind of curious to see how this next generation is going to be affected, because like, are we just going to have a dip all of a sudden where it's like, oh, it just couldn't produce any players, or maybe not as many because of this?
The golden generation's done.
Or just like an empty generation is what what happens. And then you're just gonna have to get carried, because like I was also thinking about this is kind of like a tangent, but in real life too, it's what happens to all the kids that are in schools that are just online. It's like now when they come into work, they're not gonna really know or have as much maybe in-depth experience, and they might not be able to perform as well at work. So I'm just thinking like maybe that could be something for sports too, where maybe they don't get that extra season, they don't get that extra 2 seasons that really develop, and then that could really hurt them later on in their professional career. Or maybe some might even make it to professional careers. Because now they just lost a whole year.
Yeah, because really with sports, because with sports you can't really do an online sport. You can't just play or you can't play soccer via Zoom call. You know, you can't just sit there and do like step overs and then beat someone and shoot. You're gonna break something in your house if you do that. But in the high school and youth level, I don't know if they have the money to really afford. I guarantee you they probably don't have the money to afford daily testing that these professional leagues are offering their players and such, and the safety net that they're offering the players as well. So I agree with you. I think, unfortunately, hopefully if like a vaccine will come soon and it can help protect these kids, but I feel like, we're definitely going to see a dip in quality and maybe the quantity of players and such that can get promoted, and the players that will continue playing, because there's just not enough testing, and I don't know. I don't know what these kids are going to do. I really hope that there's a solution maybe in there, but it definitely hurts to hear that some kids' dreams might get crushed earlier, or might get crushed by unforeseen circumstances, something they couldn't even control. It's not even like they were not good enough. It's just they may not have the money to keep them into an academy that's not even training them.
Because or they just might not ever get the chance. Yeah, it's kind of like Joe Burrow, like the recent number 1 pick in the latest NFL draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. He kind of tweeted, he said, if this last season never happened, I probably wouldn't be playing for the NFL this upcoming season. I'd probably be looking for a job. So I think, because like he really only broke out because of this latest season at LSU, and that kind of gave me some insight and some like analogy to how maybe some other soccer players, maybe other athletes might kind of see the situation. It's like maybe they might not get that chance. So that's gonna be a little rough, and we might see like a 1950s level of just players in terms of just like pedigree, or just
they always joke like Pele just played with a bunch of farmers.
So it's just like maybe you might get like a generation of that, because like because of just the situation we're in. Maybe it might just be more so in the US, since like we're kind of struggling with this COVID more, but I don't know how it's really affecting Europe. But it's just more of a question that I'm thinking of now, because in terms of like transfer news too, not many teams can really get as many transfers in and really test and really develop players as well now too. They're going to have to really rely on their academy and what they have, because you can't really move players around as easily these days.
Yeah, especially given the current climate of the amount of money a lot of clubs are losing because of no ticket sales and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like the last point. But yeah, when you bring up Joe Burrow, I think of so many players like Kylian Mbappe, the way he like broke out in the Champions League, or Haaland or Marcus Rashford. If they didn't have that whole season, what if they never get promoted? You never
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe they just kind of give up, or maybe they don't try as hard. I would hope that, since they're so good right now, I feel like they had the mentality to kind of make it. But if they didn't have those different spotlights where they can, break out during the season and the whole season's just gone away or canceled, I think you lose a lot of quality players that you didn't know of.
Yeah,
But
because like a lot of players literally just break out after like in one season. Maybe it was like
yeah,
their last season of their contract, and
they
or
just went
maybe it was
ham.
just like a season where a player, one of their team's star players, goes down, and then they kind of take their place.
Dude, I look at Choupo-Moting.
Yeah, Choupo-Moting
Somehow got transferred into PSG and won them the game.
That's something we'll probably update in a further episode. But just to give a quick update, Atalanta got eliminated by PSG from
Choupo-Moting, the guy that used to play for Stoke City.
Struggled at Stoke.
Yes. Literally struggled. My. That's crazy. So, it'd be wild. Shaqiri played for Stoke, but won a Champions League with Liverpool. What if Choupo-Moting ends up winning a Champions League? That means Stoke would have had 2 former Champions League winners. That's wild. Stoke, who are in the championship right now.
And almost we're in the relegation battle in the championship. So
exactly. So they must have been doing something right somehow.
I mean, they are Stoke City, man.
Yeah.
I kind of have a soft spot for Stoke City. It's just a funny club.
Man, but
in the Premier League, just always find a way.
That's just so random that could potentially happen. But this is kind of a switching gears to like more of I guess like a different topic, but FIFA 21. This is a little interesting topic for me because I usually don't buy every FIFA that comes out. Because what I normally do is whenever the FIFA comes out, it'll be cool, but I'll tend to just wait till the other FIFAs drop in price and I'll just pick that one up. And I may not have like the latest squad or everything, but since I wait like every 3 or 4 years, I'm kind of happy with whatever FIFA I get. But this year was different because I actually picked up the latest FIFA, which is FIFA 20. And I've been playing that and I've had a lot of fun with it. But FIFA 21 is coming out, obviously, and it's going to be interesting because the new generation of consoles, and I know this is not a video game podcast, but the PS5 and the Xbox, the new Xbox is going to be coming out, I think, in the November, December time.
Christmas, holiday season.
Christmas. But FIFA 21 will be interesting because the transfer market doesn't end until October, I believe. So we're talking about when the game will get launched, there's still potentially a lot of players that could still be on the move. And I don't know how FIFA will handle this because we've seen, I would look at Bruno Fernandes this year when he was bought from Sporting by Manchester United in the January transfer window. He still doesn't have an actual face in the game. Bruno Fernandes doesn't. And that's a little worrying for me because if I'm someone that's buying FIFA 21, like paying the full 60 for it, and let's say like Liverpool or Manchester United buy a player from outside of the big, league own, like a big player, like they just buy kind of a random smallish player. I'm afraid that I'm going to have to sit through all of FIFA 21 and not have that person's face. And it's very infuriating because it makes me not want to pick them, if you know what I mean. Because like, if you don't have the authentic face, it's kind of like, oh, really? It's like, I got to play with this guy. Like he doesn't even have an actual face in the game.
Like an egg with hair on it. It's like,
exactly.
Man.
And I feel like that might be the case for a lot of clubs, unfortunately, in FIFA 21, unless like they have some sort of deal where they can kind of, with the circumstances, they can kind of work around it. But I mean, it is FIFA, so I wouldn't be surprised if like we won't see any cool faces if our clubs start buying random players.
This is something we wanted to mention because FIFA is one of the ways that not only we really started to get into soccer, but also we kind of learned a lot more in depth about certain players and who's good, who's needs to improve in certain areas, and maybe what players' weaknesses are. And also just like a consistent way to always be able to get into certain leagues when they're not even playing, because you can always just play FIFA anytime you want. Yeah. But I think this is going to be a very interesting one, since now this is going to be one of the first FIFAs, I feel like, where a lot of it's going to be maintained from people working from home. So those EA servers are gonna be very.
Oh boy.
We'll see. Hopefully they have a really good work from home regimen over there at EA Sports. But I think this is going to be one of those situations now, as Yash mentioned, where the game, it could finish, but then in real life, the season's not even ready. So like the team's not even be set. The player, like the jerseys just recently just got announced for all the Premier League teams. And
that's a lot to code, to like code into the game, like all the new jerseys and such,
So it might be broken, as it usually is.
But this year maybe a lot more than normal.
Dude, that's already EA's not going to sponsor the pod, but if you do want to sponsor the pod, let us know, because we are looking for sponsors.
No, if you do work for EA, reach out to us. We'd love to chat.
We'd love to have chat anyone
and
from
like
EA
actually
on.
have an in-depth conversation about like FIFA, like what goes on and making it and all that. That'd be very interesting to hear. But I don't know. I might, like, since now I actually have a job, I might actually buy FIFA 21 when it comes out, but it'll be more because I think they're this is not a FIFA episode, but I've seen that they've actually added some cool stuff in career mode. So that could be a reason that could sway me into getting it. Plus, like, having the latest players and rosters would be nice, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of keep up with everything, all the sports games in general, because every sport game is like on a different timeline now. So I feel as though we might see some interesting things, but I really hope that, EA and FIFA kind of do their thing, because as much as we say like, oh, PES is there, but I don't know. I don't really feel inclined to pick PES over FIFA, just because FIFA still has rights towards a lot of things that PES doesn't. And PES, obviously lost the Champions League and Europa League highlight like rights as well. So I don't know. I'm still going to stick with FIFA because that's what I'm comfortable with.
I usually just get FIFA every year despite everything. But I mean, I wonder if they're also going to be authentic to this upcoming season and have no fans in the stadiums.
Oh, that'd be horrible.
That'd be funny. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll add these little quirks of this season just to make it unique, where it's like, oh, everyone on the side has masks. Everyone has to be tested. It's like your player can't play next game because he caught COVID-19. He went to Magic City. And
or instead of like
exited the bubble.
Yeah, instead of career mode, instead of the player saying I'm under the weather, and I'm not liking the weather right now. Even though I've been living in Europe even though I've been living in England for 5 years, I think the weather's definitely gotten to me for some reason under your first season. Now it's just like, oh, I got COVID, so I'll be out for 2 years. So peace.
I'll be out for 2 years. It's like, I just don't want to play in a bubble. I'm out. It's like, I don't know. But kind of speaking on this, we do want to bring up FIFA in general, because like we do have some ideas for potential Premier Pod, kind of fun alternatives that we can, or not alternatives, but like kind of features that we can have for this whole platform. And recently I upgraded some things from my own setup at home for my PC, and I'm thinking we could live stream, maybe Yash and I playing, or maybe some live video podcasts of us. And that's the ideal thing, to kind of have that, but also maybe every once in a while kind of change it up and have us kind of showing, playing some games, kind of featuring certain players within the game, and having that be kind of a cool, different thing to show for the show. So we're going to see what everyone thinks about certain ideas like that. Maybe have us play some games, have us do some video pods, or maybe some things that we're not even thinking about. Be sure to, let us know in the comments, or like, DM us on Twitter, Instagram, things like that. We're always open for new ideas for what we can do to kind of reach out and entertain y'all. So
yeah, I'm pretty excited about potentially doing like a live stream of FIFA, or doing a live podcast via playing FIFA or something like that, or playing with the fans and everything. So yeah, like Tyler said, everything he said, just if you're interested, like leave us a comment or reach out to us via Twitter or Instagram and tell us what you think about that potential idea. But
a fan tournament.
Yeah,
we would need an award for that, or like a prize. We have no budget, so if anyone likes to sponsor us, we can buy an award.
We promise we are working on that. We've just been a little sidetracked, obviously with a whole bunch of other personal events that have happened, but we've been sidetracked. But we are working on that. We promise. But yeah, I'm down. I think that would be super cool if we can get enough people to sign up for it. I think I'd be down. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be really a lot of fun and such. We definitely won't be like those toxic YouTubers or those toxic FIFA players that are raging and throwing their controller out the window if they lose. I think we'll be chill. So I know we'll definitely be chill. So it'll definitely be just like a fun time for everyone if we did play
We're
FIFA.
literally the equivalent of the people who can't play the game too much because we're working.
Yeah.
So it's like, man,
yeah,
it's
we
like
don't
this guy
have
doesn't know what he's doing.
We can't spend 8 hours learning the tactics of the game or learning every skill
like,
move possible in the game.
It'll be fun. Maybe it'll happen. We'll see. We just got that'd be a cool way to interact with the fans too and kind of get to know everyone. So that'd be sweet. But we just gotta make it happen.
That'll be fun. But quickly moving on to our last segment. It's a really short episode, kind of like hopefully it's not too random, but our last segment, the transfer, some of the transfers that have happened, not a lot, obviously, as Tyler said, just because of Corona and everything. A lot of clubs don't have that big of a budget anymore. So deals are going very, very small, a lot of small deals. But for Liverpool, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but Kostas, the left back, the 24-year-old left back from Olympiacos, Liverpool signed him for a confirmed, I see, 14.38 mil deal. But I mean, Tyler, I know you said he has a lot of pace, but did you see anything else from him on YouTube when you looked him up?
Honestly, for me, I have no idea who this guy was before he bought him. I think most people had no idea who Kostas Tsimikas was before Liverpool purchased him. He's a 24-year-old who kind of people are saying is kind of similar to Andrew Robertson in terms of his tenacity to go up the field, beat a man, and then send in a good cross. I don't know about his defensive abilities.
Yeah, hopefully he's better than said Kolasinac.
Yeah, as long as he's better than Moreno, I think we're good. Because ultimately, he probably won't be starting over Robertson, but I think he'll be a decent backup.
He's already got a better haircut.
Yeah, and he looks like a lot of people we know. I feel like he doesn't. He looks like a very UGA kind of guy. I'm like,
a very average guy.
Yeah, I feel like I'd see him downtown. But I mean, but it was cool because Liverpool bought him for, or transferred him in for, as Yash mentioned, $14.3 million or 11 million pounds, which is a lot better of a deal compared to the previous deal that they've been chasing for, I feel like, a few weeks now, which is Jamal Lewis from Norwich. And I remember Nathan roasted me for calling out certain teams for getting relegated and Liverpool buying relegation team players and then calling them bad because I was roasting City for bringing in Ake for so much. And I was like, you have a good point because Wijnaldum got in from a relegation team and then Robertson came in from a relegation team. So, I mean, I have to give Nathan that. I forgot to mention that last week. but there's a whole different scenario where Kostas is coming from a champion team in the Greek league. So he's coming from a winning team, and that'll be a very interesting kind of dynamic to bring in because now instead of being the main man, he'll be on the bench. So I don't know how he's going to handle that, but hopefully it'll be
more depth. There's more depth. I think who do they have as a left back replacement?
Milner.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's what I was thinking because now it seems like maybe Milner may have been talking to Klopp. Maybe Milner he may be thinking that maybe this season is his last, and like he probably hasn't publicly announced it, but maybe him and Klopp have had talks, and this could be one of Milner's last seasons. So I think this is Klopp kind of planning for the future without a Milner, without someone that can kind of plug in and play at left back. That's what I was thinking when they signed him.
And so, I think you're right on it in terms of just why Liverpool brought him in, because also we didn't really have that many dedicated left backs in the club. We just had people playing left back that could fill the void, like Milner, Joe Gomez, Nico Williams at times. So it's like we need a dedicated left back in case Robertson, God forbid, ever went down. So I think this is a very good sign, but we're just going to see how he goes because I don't know too much about Kostas, and people say he looks a little promising, but we'll have to see how he performs for the club. But I think under Klopp, he's basically been a pretty good track record of getting everyone he's brought in to do pretty well. And I still have hope for, certain other players are still on the rise, like Naby Keita and Minamino, of course. So
he's got to sign it. He's had to have signed at least one flop, right? Who was that one guy? Ragnar Klavan? Was he a flop?
Klavan was all right. I think the biggest flop was probably Karius.
Oh, okay. All right. But he didn't buy him really to be like a lot of expectation, right? Or was he like,
he just kind of bought him for $5 million, and then it's like, all right, be the number one keeper, and then just it was kind of unfortunate for him. But
yeah. But no, I think
talk about that. Those unfortunate times.
Yeah, I think he was like I think like you said, I think Klopp is just planning for the future and trying to plan and build more depth with the squad. And we've talked about it before, but they are in talks to sign Thiago from Bayern. I think from what Fabrizio or Razzo, I can't say his name, Romano, basically tweeted out. He said that Liverpool or Bayern want at least 30, or they basically want 30 mil for Thiago. And if Liverpool pay that, they can have him. And I think Thiago has talked to Klopp and Klopp has talked to Thiago, and they're both sides are eager. Thiago is really eager to join Liverpool. It's just if Liverpool and Bayern can kind of strike a deal in terms of the price, I feel like it will probably end up happening. Whether they get the full 30 mil Bayern does, or whether they kind of meet in the middle and maybe meet for 25 or 27, who knows? But I think it's a deal that will probably get done. So Liverpool fans, you probably have another signing coming your way soon. But for Manchester United, the same story that has been going on this entire transfer window is Jadon Sancho. It's been reported, everything is there. United have agreed personal terms with Sancho. Sancho wants to join United from everything that's being reported. It's just the price and the fee of both the clubs, Manchester United and Dortmund, not being met. Manchester United feel like what Dortmund are valuing Jadon Sancho at is unreasonably high considering the times they're in, and Dortmund are not willing to budge. And apparently I've been hearing that Dortmund haven't been really transparent with United in terms of like the deadline that was considered, that August 10th deadline. United didn't hear anything about it and such. So it was news to them. But Manchester United have made it known that Sancho is their top target. But I don't know. I feel like the way United, how long it takes them to do business dealings, I feel like it's just going to end up taking a very long time. It's going to get dragged out. And I feel like it'll eventually happen, but it's going to be a very long time. I hope it gets done sooner than later, and I hope they can go and find other people too to buy. But unfortunately, as a Manchester United fan, I don't think this will happen until the end of September or the middle of September, or possibly during the transfer deadline day, because that's just how United seem to work nowadays. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but
it was literally the funniest thing when I saw Borussia Dortmund, their official Twitter page, post a picture of Sancho training with them, and then kind of them quoting, it's like, good to see you back. So
yeah, I think so I have like a couple thoughts on that. So their sporting director, whoever, basically when Ousmane Dembele was still at the club, I think a week before he was sold to Barca, he basically said Ousmane is going to train with us, he's not going anywhere, and boom, he literally got sold a week later. And Aubameyang actually called out the Dortmund sporting director last season, I believe, when he was at Arsenal, and he basically called him out. He basically said he was a clown because apparently that sporting director said something in the media about Aubameyang, calling him a bad player or something. Aubameyang called him a clown for basically saying that he was never going to sell Dembele, and then Barcelona showed 100 mil to the table, and then he let him go immediately. And the same thing is kind of happening with Sancho, when I feel like if Manchester United finally cough up the money, I feel like they'll eventually just let him go. So I think Dortmund have made it known that they're kind of the selling club per se. And, if they didn't sell, Mario Götze, like Mats Hummels, Robert Lewandowski, all those players,
Gundogan,
then maybe they could have a little bit more leverage, but unfortunately, I think the precedent they've set is, everybody knows that they're kind of a selling club. It's like young players go there to develop enough so that the bigger clubs can come poach them. So I don't know. I think they haven't set a good precedent to really have this like kind of leverage, but obviously they're the ones that have the player. But I think eventually they'll eventually give in and sell the player.
It is a lot harder for teams outside of Bayern Munich to acquire Dortmund players for a good deal.
Bayern's literally like, you want to have like 15 mil and some
15
beer
mil for Sancho. It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, you can have him for free. Actually, we'll pay his wages while he's there for 5 years.
It's like, geez. But I honestly don't know how Sancho's going to do, because, even during the last bit of this previous season, Sancho wasn't the starter for every single game. So it's not like he's, but it's like, like as Lay mentioned in one of our previous pods, when he guest starred on, he said that when he's on, he kind of brings so much attention by the other team that even things he does off the ball is so impactful. But despite all that, he doesn't start every game too, which is kind of weird. Yeah. He does come on as a sub sometimes, but for a player like that to not even be the 90-minute player for every single game in and game out, I think maybe that's why Dortmund are maybe thinking it's like, oh, we could move him out. But in my opinion, I think they should keep him and then start him every single game and just like keep him or play him as much as they could. But, I'm not the coach.
But I feel like it's one of these situations where I've been reading a lot of like reports from really, verified, very well-established journalists that cover transfers, and they've said that he could potentially hand in a transfer request to leave. And my thinking is, if you have a player that clearly has agreed personal terms, like wants to go and join another club, and if you're like, quote unquote, one of the selling clubs, there's no point of really keeping him, because if you keep him and you run the risk of him not performing well, or him becoming him basically saying, I don't want to play for this club unless you sell me, and then he basically sits on the bench, you're basically devaluing his price tag at the moment. And if he has a couple bad performances, that's going to decrease his value as well. So I think, if you have a player that wants to leave, you're better off just like letting him leave. I don't think there's a point of him keeping him, because we've seen, for the most part, players like that, they tend to bring like the club morale down, the locker room down, and they cause a lot of tension between the board and everyone. So I don't know. If I had Sancho, if I was Dortmund, you already know that you're going to end up finding another star player, whether it's Jude Bellingham or whoever, Gio Reyna. You have the tools to find another young star player, but I don't know. I just find it very confusing, Dortmund's stance, because they've clearly shown that they're a selling club when it comes down to it,
Mm-hmm. So we're just going to have to see how this milks out, because we have until October now.
Yeah. So it's going to take its sweet time. It's going to take its sweet time, unfortunately.
That it's now, this transfer window is going on till a good bit of the season into October, while last season it was cut off before the season started in early August. So now it's like a complete opposite.
It's going to be wild, because literally a club could have a player for the first 2 months of the season and then just sell him, and then we may never see him again,
Yeah, that might be Sancho, but we don't know.
It'll be interesting though. But quickly, talking about the other Premier League clubs that have made a couple of splashes, Tottenham have officially announced the signing of Højbjerg. We've reported on it for like the 2 weeks now, but it's finally confirmed. Southampton have been doing some pretty good business. They end up getting Kyle Walker-Peters permanently, the right back from Tottenham, in that Højbjerg basically swap deal. So he can have
unofficial swap deal.
Yeah, unofficial, but it was kind of like he was on loan. Højbjerg goes there. It's kind of like, gentleman's agreement, I would say.
Yeah, there you
go. Yeah. And they bought another player that Tyler knows a little bit more about, Mohamed Salisu, a center back from La Liga. But yeah, Tyler, I know you actually know a little bit about the player, so I'll let you talk about this one.
He's like our age. He's like kind of one of those up and coming players too. So I hate saying that when it's like he's our age. I'm like, dang, dude. I don't know at this point if it's like if it's a compliment, being it's like, oh, he's young, or if we're like, man, we're just like old now to the point where like we're starting to see players that are our age making moves.
Dude, I know.
But this is an upcoming player who played for Real Bala. I can't even pronounce that word.
Valladolid or
Valladolid, yes.
Yeah.
And he is going to be very interesting for Southampton, because I feel like the center back's position was one of the weaker links. They have always had to rotate between Vestergaard,
Bednarek, and then they had Yoshida at one point.
Rest in peace. I mean, he's not dead, but
no, but he's just one of the worst defenders in the Premier League when he plays.
When he was there, it was good times. But now Salisu coming in, he could be one of those stars like Soyuncu. So look out for him, honestly, because he could surprise. Or he could be like when I used him in career mode and then just kind of disappoint a little bit and I just sell him. But I mean, it could be one of those situations. So look out for Salisu. He might surprise. He might be like Genepo.
Yeah, could be that guy I always talk about. But no, I think Southampton are doing pretty good for making those deals. Hopefully they actually turn the product that they're getting into something and they don't just turn into Everton where they buy a lot of these hyped up players and we hype them up and then they end up, poop in the bed per se, or crap in the bed when the season actually comes to it. But I think they have a decent shot of being pretty decent, but maybe this is a second Van Dijk, another star center back that comes to Southampton. You never know.
You never know. That's true.
But that kind of wraps up episode 85 for us. It was kind of more of a random topics one, but we're in the middle of the off season, but also in the middle of a Champions League, Europa League run in. So it was a bit of an odd schedule. So, we still had fun recording and everything, but like we always say, please make sure to rate, comment, subscribe. Please leave us a rating on iTunes if you listen to us on there, because it really helps boost our chances of getting seen more to other people and showing up on their feed. So yeah, any help, we do appreciate it. But make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Premier Pod. Like we said, we've been a little inactive there, but we're going to start getting back into it and everything. But always, if you ever shoot us a message, we'll definitely be sure to interact and such, no matter what you see on the feeds. And yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Premier Pod to get the episodes on there. But yeah, that kind of wraps up season 3, episode 85 for us. Thank you guys so much. Peace.